Hey everyone, and welcome back to another L&D Companion Get to Know Our Speakers. And I'm absolutely delighted, as always, to have an amazing speaker with us, and someone who I've got to know particularly well over the last few months, and I'm really looking forward to working with. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Lucy Hall. Lucy, tell everyone about you.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. Yeah, I met Foddy back in June at UKIO this year, and he was introduced by a mutual friend and colleague, and it was great to meet up with him because Foddy's one of those people that everybody knows. So to be in the radiography world and not know him is everyone's loss that doesn't know
Bless
him.
you.
I'm
Bless you.
very grateful to have met up with him. We then caught up after that, and I explained to him where I was in my career. So I am a diagnostic radiographer, have been for 25 years. Started off my career in the NHS. I trained at Guy's and St Thomas's. I went to South Bank University and started my career in London, in central London, which was definitely a test for a young radiographer. In fact, I recently went back and visited St Thomas's in my new role, which I can come on to later. And it was the first time I'd been at St Thomas's in about 20 years. And walking into that main entrance, I was remembering how it was when I was a young radiographer, finishing my night shifts and thinking, what on earth have I done in this career? It was a great experience, but also really tested me as a young radiographer. And then I stayed in London, but I moved into the private sector after a few years, and I went to work for HCA International for 15 years. I was there at different sites. And I was still working as a clinical radiographer as a CT superintendent for a few years. But then I actually moved into a deputy manager, imaging manager role quite soon, if I'm honest. I think it was recognised quite early on in my career that it was something that I enjoyed and that I was good at. I had a natural ability for it. And I moved then into an imaging manager role quite quickly. After that, I went to the Portland Hospital for 8 years. And then I did a few more different diagnostics. I did audiology, neurophysiology. I set up a neurophysiology service at the Portland, but always been in imaging.
Yeah.
I did some work at Harley Street Clinic. And then I moved to St John and Elizabeth for a couple of years, which was a smaller community site, really, a non-profit organisation. And it was great to work for them. They were going through an awful lot of change at the time that I joined. So it was my 15 years of HCA really served well in that role. And then I was brought over to the London Clinic, and I did some work for them for a couple of years. And then I think at that point in my career, I was ready to move out of an acute setting and do something slightly different. And I joined a mobile imaging company for a year or so. And then again, my life changed. I moved out of London. I moved back to my hometown, which is near Reading in Berkshire, and decided that I wanted to, again, have a slightly different change in my career. I didn't want to commute into London so much. So I went back and worked for the NHS. And I have been in the NHS for a couple of years in Swindon, and had loved my time there. But Swindon isn't around the corner from me, so an opportunity has come up for me recently, and I've now joined. I've gone back into industry, and I'm with a company that does managed staffing services, but is also looking to move into the CDC area. And also is looking for other opportunities to provide imaging services at other areas of the sector, but also working with the NHS. And I think my experience, the last couple of years' experience with the NHS, has been so valuable to me. It's an awful lot I've learned that I couldn't have learned being an outsider. So yeah, I have quite extensive experience in leadership and management, and in imaging. It's been my bread and butter for my entire career. I love it. I still am very passionate about the profession, and about promoting radiographers within the healthcare system, and the imaging department, of course, and the importance of imaging and that foundation that imaging provides across the hospital and across healthcare in the community as well. So yeah, that's me.
Wow. And I think, just as you describe all of those things to us, Lucy, I think what in that moment struck me when we first met was actually how valuable it would be for you to amplify all of that knowledge and expertise and different sectors of radiology that you've been in, and how we could actually describe that to and support other radiographers at whatever stage they are in their careers, to actually just understand how vast the opportunities are, right? I mean, that's the thing. And you've moved into leadership, and I think even whilst this particular role may not be traditional leadership in the sense of your previous roles as general manager, but you're still taking on a leadership style role. And if you don't mind, can you explain when you moved into the role of management or leadership, however you want to describe it? What was the thing that sort of kind of drove you towards going into leadership? Because it's leadership and management in healthcare is, regardless of the sectors, not not the easiest of places. So how did you maneuver that environment?
I think initially the motivation was because I wanted to effect change, and I think in all of the roles that I've walked into, even in my 15 years, I wasn't in the same role, and walking into different roles and different environments, there's always an opportunity to make things better, whether that's a better experience and a better outcome for the patient, or improving the environment for the staff, or just the staffing levels in the way they're working. I think my motivation, certainly from the beginning, was I always knew I was I had a strong my strengths are really in people management, and being able to get people to kind of come along with me. It sounds very cliche, but there is a big difference between a manager and a leader. And I always felt that one of my biggest strengths was that I could lead people, and actually that always makes your life as a manager and a leader so much easier. So, and I think I was recognised for my ability early on, and people believed in me. I can think of two people in particular in my early part of my career. I won't name them because they may actually see this at some point. But two people in particular. So one was the superintendent that I met at St Thomas's when I was training as a student, and he was the one actually that moved out of the NHS and went to HCA and kind of brought me along. He was my mentor from very early on, and remained so for many years, even after we stopped working together. And he really believed in me, and he really believed in my ability, and gave me ownership and autonomy in making decisions, but also making mistakes, and supported me and helped me through those. And then my other mentor was at HCA at the Portland. Again, she brought me over from one site from the Wellington to the Portland. I remember going to the interview with her, and I felt like it was more her persuading me to go to the job rather than me interviewing for the job. And she remained my mentor for many years after that. And I think that's why I feel so strongly about being involved in something like this, is that for me, it's really, really important to get the right support and the right mentoring at the right point in your career. And I've talked to you about this before, Foddy, and I think this is one of my biggest motivators for being here and working with you, is that what gives me the most satisfaction, I think, from moving from a job, or being in a job even, is working with younger radiographers that you can see where their talent lies, and you can see that they are motivated and that they have really, they have a strong sense of wanting to be better and want to effect positive change. But sometimes they just get bogged down in, well, I'm a radiographer, I'm here just to scan or take x-rays or further my career as a healthcare professional in the clinical space. But actually their passion potentially lies in something completely different. It lies in people management and leadership and budget control, or even more technical or digital space, with PACS or AI. And it's just tapping into that passion that they have, and giving them the right support and advice and mentoring at the right point in their career. Because I've seen a lot of people that perhaps don't have that right coaching and mentoring at the right point in their career, and they kind of go on and they almost get lost, and that talent that you can see gets wasted, and they get a bit tired and jaded, as everyone does as they go a bit further along in their career. And you've kind of lost them. Then you've lost that talent, and you can't tap into it anymore. And every time I've left somewhere and I felt like I've made a difference to somebody or a group of people in terms of where their career is heading, it is more satisfying to me than saving millions of pounds in the budget, or increasing our revenue by whatever. It's so meaningful for me to have really made a difference, a positive difference to someone's career, and put them on the right path.
Yeah, that totally. And you mentioned earlier about that, and this is why when I said the terms management and leadership, it was generally because there is a distinction between the two, and we've often spoken about this, and I recognise, Lucy, that certain environments need different types of authority, whether it's management in an operational sense or leadership from a people sense. But we spoke quite often about this, and I think going back to your point around how you can positively influence people's careers, it's about getting them at that right time and breeding that right behaviour. Because if you can strike that balance at that point in that person's career, then what you want to do is get to the situation where they are eventually in a position that they can do that for other people's careers, and then you create that ecosystem, right? And it has to start somewhere. And I've got a couple of schools of thoughts on this and how we can really try to get as impactful as we can with L&D Companion is to draw the line in the sand where we got people. There's going to be people at different stages of their careers, and I'm not just talking students and newly qualified band 5s and 6s or what have you. I'm talking about people that have reached certain pivot points, trigger points in their career, where they may be reaching different types of crossroads. So when obviously you're at the earlier stage in your career, we have an opportunity to behave, to create what I would say is accountability and self-efficacy in those people, that they can then take that forward. But then we got the other challenge, which is how do we, people maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years into their careers, reaching different trigger points, they're going to need a different type of L&D companion, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean that's the sort of things that I think we can really influence. So in terms of the education piece, Lucy, in terms of helping others, you mentioned these two particular people that were important in your career. How much of an importance do you lay on these two people? And what I mean by that is, in terms of what got you into thinking about really wanting to help others, how much of it was around, your experience with these people, your own experiences across your career?
Yeah. Yeah, these two in particular, I think for me, they were an example to me of how you can nurture somebody, how you can the best way to nurture, that talent and that enthusiasm to want to do better, but also build other positive things like loyalty and hard work, dedication, um, and a desire to always want to strive to do better. Because when you feel supported, even when you're wrong, and I think that's the real key thing here, is that I've worked under many different people in my time, and there have been times where I've worked for people that don't give you that support. They don't give you the support in the good times or in the bad times, and you feel left, and you feel vulnerable, and you take that to heart. You take it personally sometimes, and it takes a long time. As I said, I've been working for 25 years, so I have an awful lot of experience. There's not a lot that bothers me or knocks me anymore, but to know that you've got somebody that's steering you in the right direction, that's always got your back, regardless of if you make perhaps the wrong decision sometimes, but also someone that you can go to and you don't feel, scared to ask their advice, even if you think it's a stupid question. That they're always approachable, and that you have that really good relationship with them, that there's trust, and that they are there to support you, regardless, really. And I think I learned a lot from that, because I felt always in my time with both of them, and even like they crossed over at times. I guess the first guy, I've not been in touch with him for a few years now. But even when he left, I'd ring him up and I'd ask his advice on things, and I'd say, is this the right career move for me, or this has happened, and can you give me some advice? I don't know how to tackle this conversation. So I think for me, learning from them and experiencing that myself, and knowing how it felt for me as someone that wanted to work hard and was enthusiastic about their job and wanted to do better, but sometimes didn't know how to navigate people above me, or even my own teams, because it can be quite isolating being middle management. You are in charge of a very important department, and sometimes very big teams, and a budget. You're responsible for money in and money out, and you have to answer to someone more senior, and they have to answer to their exec teams, and it can be quite isolating, because you have to be the boss of the big team and running that big department basically on your own, and then you have to answer to an awful lot of people above you as well. So it can be quite an isolating job, and it you have to ensure that you feel supported, and that's from upwards as well as downwards, if you like. So another big thing for me is ensuring that I am providing my own line reports with the support and time that they need with me to do their jobs well and to feel supported, because that only makes my life easier. So but it takes a while to learn that skill. It takes a while to learn how to delegate properly. It takes a while to learn how to allow people to make mistakes and to help them through those mistakes so they don't do it again, rather than just bulldozing in and say, right, I'm going to fix it, and you don't worry about it. They never learn. No one ever learns from just their boss taking over and fixing a problem for them. So I think there's a lot to be said about managing up as well as managing down, and ensuring that the people underneath you get as much as your time and support that they need to be good at what they do, and to make your job easier.
Definitely. And one of the things that we picked up on when we talked about wanting to work together on this program was, we spoke about things, for example, like interview techniques and interview tips, and and how actually through your experience working all the different sectors, how there was particular different things that you had to think about and consider that was important potentially for one sector over another. And also on that subject, I think what's also important that's come out on a lot of our focus groups is whilst interview techniques is very important. In addition to that, as important as it is actually thinking about how do we help radiographers not necessarily think about how they just want to promote themselves in interview to go from one employer to another, but actually how do they promote themselves internally? So how do they prepare themselves for internal? I know you and I have spoken about this before, and there's been, there's examples about how we can support radiographers to be able to, promote themselves internally so that they can go into various different roles. And again, it's not just about promoting themselves that they're all going to eventually become management or leadership or whoever. It's actually about how do they promote themselves to put their best foot forward in whatever it is they want to do, clinically, technically, leadership wise. So yeah, just be good to get your views on that, Lucy, in terms of how we hope we can support radiographers that perhaps want to go into different types of roles, and it could be different industries, it could be different employees, but it could also be internally as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the things I that was a big learning experience for me was these last couple of years in the NHS and how different the interview process is within the NHS compared to outside and in the private sector and in industry. So speaking from a personal experience, my time in the private sector from sort of HCA right through to when I actually left the mobile imaging company that I was actually made redundant from, and looking for a job. I pretty much I pretty much walked into all of the other jobs. It wasn't difficult for me because I was known in the area. I was pretty much recommended for any job, any of those jobs, all of those jobs. I didn't have to try that hard. That's what I'm saying. And then all of a sudden I was confronted with no job and no, I was out of London by then, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to interview for people that don't know me and have not, my reputation in that central London area kind of spoke for itself because I worked hard and people could see the results of my hard work, and I built myself a really good reputation and a really good network. But once you're out of that comfort zone of knowing all of those people, all of a sudden you're presented with this wide world of people that don't know who I am and don't know what I'm capable of. And I had to learn very quickly how to interview properly. And this was 20 years into my career or more. And it was a humbling experience, if I'm honest. I was out of work for about 6 months and I went to a number of interviews, and probably for roles that weren't quite the right fit for me, but I wanted to do something different. So I was going for all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But I was getting rejection after rejection, and I was like, it really knocked my confidence. And then I went for the job at Great Western in Swindon, and even at that interview, I felt like I perhaps didn't do a fantastic job. But the feedback I got from my boss, who eventually ended up being my boss, was that I interviewed really well. But for me, that was more my experience spoke for itself. When you walk into a role as an imaging manager or a head of imaging in the NHS and you've had 20 years of experience, you don't really have to try hard at an interview because your experience speaks for itself. But it really knocked me, and it really made me open my eyes to how difficult it can be for experienced or even unexperienced but talented and enthusiastic people to get into those jobs. because those, a lot of the jobs, particularly in industry and in the private sector, are kind of there for people that they know, and that sounds terrible, but they, sometimes they are given to people that they've worked with before, have a good reputation already, and it can be difficult for people to get in. And if you don't interview well, you don't stand a chance. And I experienced that myself. 20 years deep into my career, I experienced a knockback, and I was thinking, what am I doing wrong? Surely my CV speaks for itself, but it doesn't. And you have to learn, I think, to tailor your interview technique to to who you're interviewing for, and what they're looking for. And in the private sector, in the NHS, very, very different. And again, it goes back to that, you don't want to lose out on these good people just because of a rubbish 1 hour interview. And again, I we've talked about this before. Again, it's one thing that I feel very strongly about is arming people with those tools. And from my perspective and what I've learned in my career, not just from being an interviewee, but also I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I know what I'm looking for, and I know what works, and I know what doesn't as a hiring manager. And I just would love to be able to share some of that experience and that advice with whoever wants to listen, and if they want to further their career in how to get the best foot forward, get the best chance you can to be considered for those roles that you really want.
No, that's brilliant, Lucy. And I think that's it. I mean, whilst we know there's no magic bullet per se, if we can arm people, as you rightly say, with the right things to consider, and a certain level of professional discipline, dependent on where it is, that they're attending. Because a few things come to my mind. One is the mindset of somewhere, like you say, where you don't know anyone. And there's that aspect, and then there's the complete reversal, which is, say, for example, if you're going for an internal role, and the familiarity of people that you see day in day out, all of a sudden being your interviewers. So these are all the sort of things we're going to deep dive into as part of it, and I'm pleased to say it's pleased to say what a pleasure it is that's going to be working with you on this program, Lucy, because I think interview techniques may well be, the first sessions we may touch upon, but just given the amount of knowledge and experience of different sectors and different leadership experiences, I think, we will head out into other areas, no doubt, as well. And I think the other thing, if you don't mind me saying it as well, the other thing that I felt was really important about working with someone like yourself is it's real world lived in experience. Now, the thing at the moment I believe we need for radiographers and for healthcare workers working on the front line is they need to hear experience, knowledge and wisdom from people that are there and in the coalface, and they understand and empathise with the challenges that are going on day to day in all of the sectors. Because as inspirational as I find going to conferences and going to events, the challenge always for me, for the individuals that go to these events, is how can we equip them to do something practical the following day, because they're going to go back into their environment. So I really believe with your experience, with our experience of the speakers, we're going to be able to just offer some regular day-to-day learning and education that they can bring and implement into their, as I say, their day-to-day practice. So, I'm delighted to be working with you, Lucy. Just final thoughts. The L&D Companion, your views on education for radiographers and how we can develop in. Any final words from you about how you would like to take your role forward with as a speaker?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think I the coaching and mentoring part of my role, which actually, if I'm honest, in the new role that I'm in, is lacking completely. I don't have the same team that I had before, and I miss it. I miss the one-to-ones I had with my line reports, and I miss being able to to help and support and to advise. And for me to be able to sit on a webinar or on a call with people and just have them ask me questions, and I haven't got the magic answer, but with 25 years of experience in the different areas that I've worked in, and like I said, that NHS experience has helped me so much in terms of my, it's kind of completed my circle of experience. I wouldn't want any radiographer that is like I was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, eager to get into the leadership and the management and effect change for the better, to miss out on that opportunity just because they weren't sure how to approach an interview or write a good CV or do a good application. And if I can help just one person get onto that next rung of the ladder, to be able to, promote our profession and to promote them as individuals in their career, then it'll be a job worthwhile doing.
Brilliant. Well, that's a great place to leave it. Lucy, thank you so much. I can't wait to be working with you. I can't wait to be going live. I think watch this space for dates for Lucy's webinar on the L&D Companion. Looking forward to getting cracking, really. So thank you very much, Lucy. And yeah, can't wait to get started.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.